Hello, bienvenue, willkommen to episode number 29 of the Wonder of Stuff Vodcast, broadcast live on Google Hangouts on air every weekend, usually a Sunday like it is tonight. This is the place where you'll find news, information and commentary on science, engineering and technology from the past week and beyond, and anything else that interests us from inside our tiny little human brains. My name, as always, is John Gardner, and my colleagues who are going to help us through the journey to knowledge, Richard Smith and Ross Davidson. Say hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps. That was so enthusiastic.
It was a bit too enthusiastic, wasn't it? I get told off by my missus for doing stuff like that. She's far too American. Anyway, good. So, we're on with the show. Some good stuff in this week, especially some breaking news as well at the end, which Ross will take you through. But I'm going to start off with one of my stories. And this is about material science. Now, earlier this year, I think it was about January, February time, we did a story about hydrophobic material, which is in this particular hydrophobic material is any material that repels water, but this particular material had an etched lattice on, done by a laser, if you remember. If you ever heard it, I don't know. And the idea was that it was so hydrophobic that it would probably never ever get rusty at all. Well, it's a different metal. It's actually an alloy. If you remember from your school science, an alloy is any two or more metals that are mixed together. And these are called shape memory alloys. And shape memory alloys they've been around for a while. The idea about them, and this was postulated back in the 1930s, but it was only in the 1960s when we kind of started making them, or we could make them. And the idea with these shape metal alloys is that you can start off with one shape, you can bend the alloy out of shape, and by some initiation, it will go back to the original shape. So what normally happens is, they call it like it remembers. It remembers the original shape. So you would take the shape that you wanted, they call it the parent shape, and then you take it, get it into the parent shape, the shape that you want to be the default, and then you heat it up to like something like 500 degrees Celsius. And that sort of sets it. It sets this little counter to 1 and says, this is my default. And obviously it's all doing this through the crystalline structure. So, and then you bend it to whatever shape you want. And once it gets past that bending temperature, which is normally about minus 50 to 166 degrees Celsius, it'll snap back into place. And then you can do that. Now, that's called the transition temperature, and up until now, because I was thinking, well, I've always known about these, but I don't know where would actually use them. And then I thought, well, yes, we've used them in glasses, because you remember that Vision Express, or their opticians are available. Vision Express used to do an advert where you take a glass and you bend them in, and they would pop back. Well, that's an SMA. So we've known about them for a while. We've been doing them since the 1960s. Where's the story here? Well, this new story is to do with how many times you can bend something and it'll snap back into the original position. Up until now, we've had a limit, and that limit's been about a couple of thousand times. So it's gone from like it's elastic properties where it snapped back to being like a plastic where it's gone over that limit, and the structure's been affected to such a degree where it doesn't exhibit that property. But this new one, this new alloy was found by in a joint German and US project, and essentially it was an accident. So they were playing about. They've always known that the best alloys to start with for this type of thing is a nickel titanium mix. So they started with a nickel titanium mix, and with a bit of luck, they added they had some copper in and they added some cobalt in, and they found out that this was really good. This worked really well. It was an SMA, and they also found out, and they kept bending it out of shape, bringing it back, and they realised that they were going over the standard a couple of thousand times where they normally goes out of shape, and they reckon that this new SMA can be bent about, I think it's 10 million times.
Blimey. That's quite an increase.
It is an increase, and immediately you start thinking, well, if you can only do it a couple of thousand times, sort of your glasses is about all you can do. It's something that's easily replaceable. When you're going over to the 10 million mark, you can start thinking about replacing body parts, because that's the sort of area, the time you would need to do it. So so that's, what do you think of that?
You know, when they're saying bend out of shape, I take it means like example of the glasses where you completely change them, because like an iron bar that a weightlifter would use, that bends out of shape every time he uses it, doesn't it? But it goes back to the original straight. But obviously,
that's just like a deformation.
Yeah,
size deformation.
Yeah. That doesn't count.
No. It has to be beyond a certain. So like you would have to, if you bent it slightly and it went back, that doesn't count. If you bent it at a 90-degree angle,
right,
and then it went back, that would count.
Right.
And it's also sort of you can make them into sort of interesting shapes as well, can't you? It's not just a straight bar going back. You can sort of understand it, but interesting shapes, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember. I remember watching a video, an old video about this, and I'm sure it was a metal that had two shapes. So you could sort of, if it's hot, it was this shape. If it was cold, it was that shape. And the video I was watching, they were trying to think of uses for it. And what they actually did was they created like a water wheel, and they had a sort of a water. If you imagine a circular thing of water, but it was in quarters, and there was 2 hot quarters and 2 cold quarters, and then they had a wheel with this metal on, and they pushed it round, and as the metal went in the hot, it went one shape, and it hit the cold and it went the other. And this wheel started doing that, and it was like a motor with no, well, it had moving parts, but no. The driving force was the deformation of the metal, which was fascinating.
I think there's a single memory effect and there's the two-way memory effect, which is that one, and it's the different temperatures. That's what stores the crystalline structure in different ways.
So that's why there's a limit, because presumably every time it undergoes chemical change, which it's doing to change shape, it's using energy, which is finite and eventually runs out, basically.
Well, I suppose the energy, for that example, the energy is going to be probably coming from the hot water, so it'll be cooling the water down.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you say, the being able to do the deformation and coming back to its original shape thousands of times, like you say, you're very limited in what you can use. But millions of times, that opens up a massive amount of possibilities. It'll be fascinating to see what they do with this. Is in terms of the size of pieces of metal they can create, does it scale? Does this affect scale, or is it just sort of on the small level?
No, as far as I know, it's scalable as well. It's scalable. It's not about the size of the metal. It's as long as it keeps the particular structure. So as long as you can do that, it will scale to any size essentially. I mean, obviously they'll have not got to that stage yet, but yeah. And I mean let me just see if I can just show you the image that Wikipedia has about things like this. Let me just see if I just share this out. So this one is that is the two-way one that you were saying. So there's the original, and then there's the bend, and then there's a different bend depending on what temperature it's at. And if I go back.
So apart from the glasses, what other examples of uses?
Well, I think they're saying things like saying things like in the automotive industry, there's actuators and valves that can for pneumatics and stuff.
I suppose if you've got something in an engine that you have a valve
they also
that has
said
to
heart
open.
valves as well. They also said heart valves.
Right.
But
A metal plate in your skull would be useful if that had some flex in it. Presumably that's a big problem, that bone.
You wouldn't want it to change when you got hot though.
yeah, it went square.
Yeah.
Dung. You
Yeah,
do your best Crichton impression.
In motors and stuff, where if you have a valve that releases pressure when the temperature gets too hot or something, obviously you don't need to have a sensor to measure it, so you don't have any parts that can fail.
Well, that's essential.
It's just when it gets hot, it will open or it will change shape. Or
you're
close or
cutting
whatever
down
you want.
on the other mechanical parts of it that you need.
And this will be
in the structure.
And it'll be so reliable. It'll be much more reliable than. Well, I don't know. Actually, I assume that there's no drift in terms of like what temperature it changes. I assume it's a very strict limit. Is it? It's not like you start changing at a hotter temperature as time goes by.
Well, it says that you like the 500. Well, they gave us an example, and these different alloys have obviously different temperatures, but the 500 degrees is like a setting temperature to set the memory. And then it'll work anywhere between minus 50 and 166 degrees, again, depending on the alloy.
So you can sort of tune it by different amounts of different metals.
I think that's the idea, yeah. I think that's the idea.
Even if the thresholds change, they're going to change uniformly, aren't they? So as long as you can project them with a test piece of kit, it's going to be the same, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's very accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, generally, most of the products that you're finding this in are something to do with an actuator, whether that'll be in the aircraft industry and motor industry. They're even saying here in telecommunications, you've got an autofocus actuator on a smartphone. That could be an SMA. They say they already use them in bridge buildings. There's SMA wires that they have in which sense cracks and contract to heal the sort of like the bridge.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they do, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was just
I know it's not like an expansion joint. This is for cracks. I mean, the expansion joint is just a bimetallic strip. But for actually, if you see cracks in the concrete, they embed them in the concrete, the reinforced concrete, and any cracks, it kind of seals them back up again, which is interesting. I don't exactly know how that works, but another, like I said last week, sort of a definite exciting time for science. Stuff across the whole spectrum is happening. Mm-hmm. So not just in one bit. So there's bits of material science which are branching out that way, and there's bits of biological sciences. Britain, it's all good stuff.
Robin Williams
I'm excited.
Robin Williams did this years ago with Flubber.
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not pink. I think Flubber was pink. I mean, I'm not being a film expert.
Green.
Was it green?
Yeah.
Was it? Oh well, there you go. It should be pink. Pink. Flubber is a pink name. Right. Well, I think that's all for that. Just another one of those things that I'll watch out on, and I'll bring back in another one of our something old, something new episodes. But the next topic is this is a good one. I'm looking forward to this. This is Richard's, and the title is People Who Don't Like Music. And the first thing that Ross said, and I kind of agree with him, are there any of these?
Yeah, they don't exist, surely. Everyone likes music.
It's 5% of the population.
Really? How? Explain.
But don't like any music, any type of music.
Correct, yeah.
So not even, well, I mean, but there's so many... There's so many different types of music. You can't just say carte blanche, I don't like music.
Was this simply a survey where they said, do you like music? And the answer was no.
No, this is scientific.
Okay.
So there's two aspects. One is the people who don't like music, and one is other people's reactions to that, which is just as important to it, which will make sense. But so I guess your reactions are a mix of disbelief and probably thinking those people are weird if they do exist, basically.
There's something wrong with them.
Yeah, which seems to be the common. But
Hold on. What's the percentage of people that are deaf?
no, it's not. It's not. Yeah.
Well, you can't say that either, because Evelyn Glennie is a famous deaf percussionist, and she will say that she loves music.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, first of all, there's no music center in the brain as such. There's the audio cortex, there's logic, there's memory. So if you're looking for differences, you would look there. There is people with various conditions. There's a condition called amusia, which are people who can't process music. They can't understand the pitch, and they can't recognize songs, basically. So
that's sort of like music version of dyslexia.
Yeah, they just would hear it as noise, and so it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be pleasant. It would just be, there's no
just white, just like horrible discordant white noise or something.
Like listen on the radio.
Wow.
So it makes perfect sense that they wouldn't, and that you can be born with that. It can be a result of brain damage, but those are nowhere near 5% of the population. That's a very, very small percentage would have that. So this has been studied, but there's a Barcelona-based study on the reward center. So they were investigating these 5% people who have, if you like, normal brains. So physically, there's no difference. And they found basically nothing wrong with their reward center. So it wasn't that they weren't being rewarded in the same way as other people were. Everything else was checking out, and they called the condition specific musical anhedonia, which is the inability to derive pleasure from music.
Inability to derive pleasure. That's.
Yep. And then when you survey people.
Are they more? Do they tend more to suicidal thoughts as well?
There is a difference. I'll get onto that. So this is the first Barcelona study, but the outcome of that as well is that if you ask people, what do you think of people who don't like books, or what do you think of people who don't like poetry, or what do you think? People don't tend to find that particularly weird. The things that they tend to find quite unnerving is people who don't like music and people who don't like food. And I don't think there's been a study on why that is particularly, but the speculation is that because of our evolutionary history, food gathering is an important part. It's a social aspect. Perhaps music is part of the way that we've spoke to each other in the past, and it's a communal type thing, and so therefore we'll find that quite unnerving if somebody doesn't want to participate in that, then it's I guess it's unsettling for us. So there was a study done by the University of Colorado last year, and this suggested that there's a social aspect, which is a critical part of our development, social communication. And what they actually found was a strong link between people who feel the need to belong to social groups. They have a much stronger need to listen to music. So there is a correlation between people who want to be part of communities and groups enjoying music, and people who aren't interested in music. So
you see, I don't know about that. You see, because I generally don't like people. Exceptions, but
you say that, but you're not a social outcast, are you?
No, I'm not a social outcast, but at the same time,
you'd rather stay at home listening to music.
Yeah. No, but it's not something that I consciously think about. I've been listening to music and playing music for as long as I can remember, and I wouldn't do it if I hated it.
No.
I mean, I could quite.
I buy the part that you love music. I'm just not quite buying the part. I mean, you are definitely part of. I mean, you have a family that you see. You have friends that you see. You go out socially. So you are a social person.
Occasionally.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
No, that's not strictly true. I'm
You work with people.
I work with people.
I mean, the social aspect of music I understand, but I think apart from the odd occasions when I get out to a gig or something like that, I consume music solitary. I don't listen to music.
It's not saying that people who enjoy music in a social situation. It's saying there's a correlation between people who enjoy music are also people who feel that they want to belong to a group, a social group.
Right.
So they're two separate things, but people who enjoy music have that in common. They also are people who. So the bottom 5% of least social people also seem to be the bottom 5% of people who are indifferent to music.
That's weird. I mean, from a sort of an evolutionary thing, like you say, music would have been around a lot longer than books, I assume. But
music, I mean,
evolved.
Music is just more than one tonal difference. I mean, some people would even say one tonal difference is music as well. But
yeah, you're both right, and animals. Non-human animals don't tend to enjoy music, as far as I know. So it's definitely a thing that's a human thing, and it's part of our recent evolution. And it makes perfect sense that the socially derived aspect, which is a recent evolutionary development, that's tied in with music. So basically, that's what it seems to be saying.
But you also say that now many farmers would say that their milk yields have gone up since they started playing their cows' music in the milking sheds. And the cow, I'm guessing, is not saying, "Ah, yes, the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra playing Beethoven's Fifth. Oh, jolly good."
But the cows who their yield doesn't go up are just the most antisocial cows you could ever meet.
Yeah. So, they're the ones in the other side of the field where nobody talked to Ermentrude.
I've got a quick question. Is birdsong considered music?
Absolutely.
So there's an animal that enjoys music?
Yeah.
I mean,
presumably among social animals who have calls, the ones who are not social are also indifferent to the song, because that is the calling card of the social. That's what it's saying basically, is that actually music is not that different to birdsong in that sense. That we use it to convey, something to say, we all enjoy this together. This is something that connects us, and people who are indifferent to that connection are indifferent to making a social connection altogether. So it's basically saying music is a socially derived thing. It doesn't mean necessarily that if you love music, you're the most social person. But it's just saying if you're in the bottom 5% and you're completely indifferent to music, you're probably indifferent to being part of the community.
It has to be said that whole idea of it being sort of the most, what's the word? Least sort of liked, non-like. You meet someone who doesn't read books and you don't say anything. If I met someone and I went around their house and they didn't have any means of playing music or speakers or any CDs or a radio or anything like that, I would think it was weird. Whereas if I don't see any books around, I wouldn't bat an eyelid.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of these things that, if I knew someone who said they just don't listen to music and they don't like it, I would think they were weird.
That's a typical reaction, and I guess what they seem to be finding is that there's good reason for that reaction, or at least there's evolutionary motive for people to be like that. Whether it's correct what is natural is not necessarily right, but it's saying that's why if you're part of a 95% majority and somebody identifies himself in a 5% minority, in evolutionary terms, that's a outlier, isn't it? Basically. Yeah.
So, I mean, right, okay. There are approximately 65 million people in this country. That means 3.25 million people don't like music.
Yeah.
That's astronomical. Where are these people? Do they all sit together? Oh no, but they would be social then. They can't all sit together. So they would like music instantly. Wow, that's I'd love to know. Well, put on the show notes where you got these stats from.
Okay.
Because that's useful. Because 3.25 million people in this country are sitting at home now on their own,
not listening to music.
not listening to music.
Well, I must admit, I mean, I'm nowhere near into it as much as you two are. You know, I do listen to it. And when I've said to my wife before, well, I'm not really bothered about music, she'll say, well, that's a lie. You know, when you go out, you feel upbeat with music, and you do listen. You know, you do.
And you're a professional dancer, so professional dancers tend to like music.
But I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't say life is not worth living without music. I could get by. So I don't know.
But I don't think I could.
I say things like, I don't like films. That's obviously blatantly untrue. I find films a struggle because I can't suspend disbelief, and I get very uncomfortable when I sit longer than half an hour in one position. So that's that's why I don't particularly enjoy. But it's not enjoyed films. There's loads of films that I actually really love and would watch many times. So that's just rubbish. I do that mostly for effect.
It does seem, though, a bit like what Ross was saying before, that books and film are kind of like a modern construct, whereas probably music, the reason that it's a bit more odd that you might not like that is that it's kind of just part of human heritage. It's like, it almost is like, well, you're not part of the human race if you don't get music.
I would discuss that and disagree with that and say that you're not comparing apples with apples there, because music is a communication form. Books are not a communication form. The words are. So reading, if you're comparing reading and music, that's probably more comparable.
Yeah, well, I think that's what they mean when they say books. They mean people don't find it unnerving realizing that other people don't read. They don't. You know, if you choose not to, if you're literate and you choose not to read, then, like Ross was saying, that if somebody admitted that, it would be a bit weird, but not as weird as saying, I never listen to music and I avoid music because it does nothing for me. That, to me, that is weirder to say, isn't it?
Yeah. Isn't there a thing about one of the reasons why we like music to do with the beat? Isn't a beat a sort of a underlying thing that humans have? I mean, you mentioned there isn't a music center of the brain.
Well,
I'm sure I read something about how a repetitive beat actually does have an effect on your brain.
It's all to do with it's all to do with the womb and the heartbeat and stuff.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
So anything that's repetitive and constant like that,
takes you back.
Yeah, it takes you back. But equally, I mean, I consciously listen to a lot of music that doesn't have a beat into it, especially if I'm doing some coding or something.
Is that thing about the heartbeat true, though? I mean, I've heard that. That sounds like an old wives' tale to me. I'll tell you why. Because I remember hearing this when the kids were little, and when they're very, very young, that does definitely calm them down. It doesn't seem to work when they get a bit older. And the thing with young children is the neurons are all replaced. The memories are all... You don't have memories from before too. So, you know, an 18-month-old child doesn't remember being in the womb. There's absolutely no possibility of remembering that because that brain structure is gone. Those memories are literally gone. So I don't get how they could possibly have an infinity to that. Unless you kept it going. You know what I mean? Unless you kept the beat thing, so you kept the heartbeat. You know, we have a thing when they're in their cribs that goes around and has a heartbeat setting on it, and it does calm them down. And I suppose if you kept that up, then they would still have an affinity to that. But if you got rid of that and then introduced them 6 months down the line, there's no way they would have an affinity with that. Because
well, I think you'll find you're incorrect, Richard, because I've got an article here from the Daily Mail, which categorically states the contrary to that. So you're incorrect, and obviously the Daily Mail is correct.
They've probably ran a story that contradicts that at some point in time.
Probably.
I'm good on Richard's side of that. Actually, just before we finish this, on the subject of music, did you see the news about Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters?
Yes, and broken leg. What a star!
What a star! He broke his. Did you see this, Richard?
No.
You know the Foo Fighters, yeah?
Yeah.
Are you aware of the beat combo?
I'm not. I can take them or leave them, to be honest. Yeah. But yeah, come on.
Well, they were playing in Stockholm, I think it was.
It was somewhere in Sweden, anyway.
It was the second song, and he stumbled, misstepped, and fell into the security run and broke his leg. And went off for about, I think it was 15 minutes. He was off.
Have you seen the videos on YouTube?
I've seen the videos. Yeah.
Fabulous.
He got wheeled back on by a paramedic in a wheelchair, put him on a seat with his leg in a cast, and performed for another 2 hours. He refused to go to hospital. What a legend!
I know. I saw the thing about Enrique Iglesias. That he was
catching the quadcopter.
Yeah, and he grabbed the throat.
Sorry, what? He what?
He trapped. There was a quadcopter filming him, and he thought it'd be a good idea to grab it, and like stars do when there's a camera in the front, they'll grab it and do that. He did that with a quadcopter, and then he chopped his finger off.
He just put a bandage around it, and then he just performed with his arm behind his back, which was like dripping with blood.
it's not comparable. That was just a little nick. Dave Grohl broke his leg.
Oh dear, that's a shame. I would have liked to have seen that and laughed. Right, excellent. Now on to the last story, and this is the one that we're so on the ball here. We are so on the ball. This is breaking news. It's only a couple of hours old. And over to Ross at the news desk.
Okay, so...
Was this from the 1950s? I've never heard the news do that. This is a film reel, Pathian news. It's a cinema.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, carry on. So, yeah, this is basically about the filet lander. Now,
do you remember that, everybody? Do you remember that, kids? We talked about it in the very first episode.
Was it the first episode? Was it?
It was. Because I remember that it was happening as we were planning it. This just came on. It was like, yeah, we've got a story.
So this was last year. It wasn't last year. It was 2014. It actually,
which is last year.
Yes, that's true. Actually, yeah. I'm ahead of myself. 12th of November 2014. So basically, this was the filet lander was European Space Agency. It was the Rosetta probe, and was sent to intercept a comet, who I will not try and name. And it basically took 10 years to get there, and they sent it down, and if you remember, it went down, it bounced, it went around and landed in a dark hole, and unfortunately didn't get enough sunlight to actually power itself up enough to communicate, and went silent.
Oh.
Exactly. Now with these probes, they're programmed to sort of cope with these sort of things, so it went into a safe mode, like hibernation basically. And the idea is that it sits there and waits until it gets enough sunlight, charges its batteries, and then starts communicating. And it communicates with the Rosetta probe, which is basically orbiting the comet.
So it uses that. It uses that as like a
relay.
A relay, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the scientists realised this had happened, and then thought, okay, well, we will have to just wait. And I think it was March. I think they started actually listening to see if it had got enough power, and they heard nothing. So they waited and waited and waited. And then, this morning, or very late last night, was it late last night, or was it this morning?
It was yesterday, yes. It was late yesterday.
And Rosetta received an 85-second transmission. Out of the blue, it suddenly said, hello, here I am. So they got 300 data packets, I think it was, of information from Philae, basically saying basic information, things like what temperature it is, how much power has it got, and they also actually got information, sort of historical information. So they think it's actually been trying to send a little bit longer, and basically what they're doing now is they're going to wait for the next contact, but now it's ready to start actually analysing the comet. So hopefully they'll actually find out where it is, because that's one thing they didn't know. They couldn't actually see where it didn't. It may have hit the spot that they aimed for, but it didn't. If you remember, it had all these different ways of attaching itself to the comet, and each one of them failed, I think. So they reckon it bounced and did a massive jump, but they didn't quite get any pictures of where it actually landed. So that's some of the information hopefully they'll get, and obviously information about the composition of the comet itself, and yeah, exciting news. So it wasn't a disaster after all.
It is, and I was just been talking to Ross about this beforehand. This is their cute little tweets that they're putting out, because the last one was on the November the 14th, and he said, "I'll tell you more about my new home," and then Z's, and then today nothing more, and then "Hello Earth, can you hear me?" Which is nice, isn't it? Oh, and then it talked to the Rosetta. "Hello, I'm awake. How long have I been asleep?" Oh. But he said he's still a little bit tired anyway, so he's going back to P nights. Bye bye.
So this is the thing. It's obviously took a long time to charge itself up. They think it's basically because the comet's approaching the sun, so it must be getting sunlight, but just gradually it's getting more and more and more. So it's sort of trickle charged itself enough to actually send that first sort of "hello world" type message with its basic information, and then it's gone back to hibernation again. So I think gradually it'll be sending larger and larger packets of data.
Actually, one of the Twitter feeds that I subscribe to is a guy who works for ESA, and he's actually posted an actual telemetry graph. So they are getting information. I think they said they've got 24 watts of power, which is enough.
It's at minus 35 degrees is its temperature, and 24 watts is the power.
Yeah. So that should be good.
Yes.
We're only a few months delayed, but like we'll follow it on from where we left off in November. Jolly good.
And unfortunately, I've run out of stuff.
You've run out of stuff already.
I was going to do an update on some other space news. I couldn't find any.
You couldn't find? There's nothing happening at all. Well, you could repeat the one.
I do have a small set of backup things. If you want to do
for this very eventuality. Go on.
Actually, this reminds me. There was some news. Have you heard of Bloodhound SSC?
What, the car?
The car, yeah. See the news about that? They're actually going to cancel it. It's going next year now. It was going to come.
Yeah, this is the follow up to Thrust SSC, was it?
Yeah, that's the one.
And this is the one that's sponsored by Rolls-Royce and Jaguar and various other manufacturers, and they were going to try and break or set another land speed record. 1,000, was it?
Over 1,000 miles an hour is the plan.
So
3 vehicles, I think.
Yeah, this was supposed to go ahead on one of the salt flats in America, isn't it? I think. Yeah. And it was supposed to go ahead this year, but yeah, I did see that they pushed it back. I presume because they've got some things to work out.
I'm not sure what the reason was, to be honest. I just saw the news. But no, the reason I put that, I've got a document here which is just for random things to provoke conversation, and it's some random statistics. And that was about the fact that its engines are 135,000 horsepower engines.
And they're because they're Rolls-Royce engines, aren't they? So they're I've taken their
135,000 horsepower.
That doesn't make any sense.
Why?
Well, 1,000 would make a lot of sense, but what?
135,000 brake horsepower.
Yeah.
30,000 would make sense. 135,000.
It's going very fast, you know.
It's 7.5 tons as well.
Yeah.
I know, but I mean, I bet you a freight bloody ferry doesn't have that.
Probably won't.
But it goes very slowly.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to go at 1,000 miles an hour. Now that was something I would like to see. You put your car on the ferry across to Calais. There you go. We're here. But yes, I'm just desperately trying to find out why it says we've put it back.
Do you want another random stat, by the way?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. Apple's quarterly profit is £11.8 billion. That's 5.4 million every hour. That's how much they make.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive. But
While I'm on the roll as well, just
go on then.
there was another one that I was chatting about last night, which I found out. 1 in every 100 Americans is in prison.
Yeah, well, that's what you said last night, and I said it this morning. I said, well, but what was the stat about how many prisoners equates to how many prisoners in the world or something are all in America?
Half the prison population of the world is in
America. I said, well, but that doesn't include all the secret prisoners in Myanmar and North Korea and.
No, apparently it does.
Well, how do you know? How can you include stats that you have no clue how many there are?
I don't know.
It's not a very good stat, is it really, Ross?
No, I think it's quite interesting.
Presumably some countries just...
Yeah, but it's made up.
So they never end up in prison, they just go, bye.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true.
But the whole point is, I mean, they don't know. They don't know whether they've shot them or they're just hiding them away because they'll never see them again.
But still, even if the comparison was the developed world and half of it, which is a fraction of what that figure actually is, even if it was half the developed world or the prison populations in American jails, that still would be staggering, wouldn't it?
Yeah. 1 in 100 is... I mean, I say 1 in 100, it's something like 780 out of 100,000 or something, so it's like 0.7.
It's one of those stats that perhaps people who campaign for harder sentences across the board or campaign that deterrents really do work should maybe look at before keep saying that, because the evidence would seem to suggest that it doesn't.
Yeah.
And just before we're ending the program tonight, Rob C, he's watching again tonight, and he does confirm that Flubber indeed was green. So there you go. I was wrong. For some reason, I thought it was pink.
That's Flubber 2, the sequel.
No, I'm trying to think what I thought was pink.
Flubber was a remake, wasn't it? Was it not an old film? Originally, it was an old film. Was it a remake of a?
Oh, like
I was going to say black and white film. It could have been pink.
I don't know. Is it like the Freaky Friday was a remake of the original, whatever?
Like Nutty
I don't
Professor
know.
and that sort of.
You asking me about films?
You love them
I
so
am
much.
the least convincing film buff. Yes, I am aware of celluloid film. Yes, indeed. Oh, hang on. Rob's messaging us. Oh, he's just laughing. Okay, well, we should wrap this evening's fun-filled extravaganza up, and I put some spam on Facebook in a vain hope to get some questions, and I got one shared post and not a sausage. Oh well, I did. To be fair, I got 3, but they weren't exactly serious questions.
What were the questions?
Well, they're on there now. One of them was, why does code never work when you're looking at it or something? Why do EMC SANs have the world's most expensive hard drives? Things like that.
Well, you could probably find a serious answer to that second one.
But I know that they're money grabbing gits. There you go. And like I said, it's because there's magic and pixies inside. Which is, to be honest, the reason why that was posed is because I did have a conversation with an EMC salesman, and I said, well, the hard drives in your SANs are exactly the same model as ones that I can buy from PC World. Why are the ones in PC World 150 quid and yours are 1,500 quid?
Did he confirm that the M in EMC does indeed stand for magic then?
Extreme Magic Corporation, yeah. And he looked at me. Both of them looked at me with a face of, "Why are you asking me that question, you moron?" Because, and then he went down to tell me all these things, and I said, "Yeah, but surely that's not. Doesn't mean £1,500 against £150. There's
At
a whole.
least mask the fact that you're doing that by increasing the charge on components that you can't compare.
Yeah, I mean, his to be honest, his answer was, well, it's the microcode, and I'm like, yeah, right. You paid for that on the very first hard drive, but you keep selling to everybody else at the same price. You money grabbing gits. Needless to say, we changed from AMC to HP and found they were exactly the same.
Obviously, more available.
Anyway, that is this evening's Wonder of Stuff, episode 29. Next week, on episode 30. Yes, you can see how we're doing it. And as always, please give me questions. Give us questions. I'd love to do a show which is just question and answer show, but so far, apart from Rob, and we've had very little questions. We believe people. The stats show us that people are indeed watching this, but we have no other concrete.
Although we don't know that they're watching it for very long. They could be watching it for 15 seconds. Then fuck this. Close it.
Well, that is entirely possible. Although the stats do say that on some of them, at least some of them, people did watch for an entire episode.
No, right.
Do you get stats on whether they watch more than one?
Yeah. Well, you've got access to them. You've got access to all the Google Analytics stuff. It's there. Right. Anyway, so give us some stuff. If you don't like us, please tell us, and then we might, pack up, and go and do something more interesting. Although we enjoy it, so we'll wrap it on anyway. So yeah, usual stuff. When I end the show, we've all got our Twitter handles. Please tweet us, please.
Don't sound too desperate.
Please tweet us.
Is there anybody there?
We've got an email address as well. Oh god, what happened there? Something happened. We've got an email address as well, windowstuff@gmail.com. We all have access to that. Please send us some stuff. And we've got a blog. Please look at the blog. wonderstuff.blogspot.com. Please. Okay, well, that's another exciting, jam-packed filled episode. Next week, we have more of the same. So, until then, say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.